Hey, it's your king here to review the festivities this weekend in Nashville, Tennessee. And I want to start out with a roast. Now, ironically, about halfway through, Rick was so hammered, he forgot it was a roast and he thought it was a funeral. He started bawling his eyes out. And throughout the roast, you had old Haystacks Thompson apparently greased some NFL players and some other random folks from the world of entertainment, like Chevy Chase, who got his cameo in under a minute. Apparently, he was probably charging old Haystacks Thompson by the minute. So it was kind of sad to see these folks. It wasn't personalized. They didn't really know who Rick was, and you would imagine that Eric Bischoff would be very personalized in his roast of the Nature Boy. But instead, he got up there and he started promoting his manscaper and pretending like he was shaving his ball hair and his butt hair. It's very odd indeed. He barely said anything about Flair. And one of those cameos was Chael Sonnen, and between the god-awful look of his neck, Eric Bischoff's neck, and Brian Knobbs from the Nasty Boys neck, I would have demanded a refund just for the trauma of having to look at those necks. So if you bought the roast, think about it. Ask old Haystacks Thompson for a refund. Then you had DDP go up just before Flair, and you know the difference between old Diamond Dallas Page and Jesus, don't you? Jesus doesn't walk the streets of Atlanta thinking he's Diamond Dallas Page. And then Rick gets up there, like I said, bombed out of his mind. He thought he was in a funeral. He was crying, tears pouring down his eyes. He barely coherent in what he was saying. And Rick, Don doesn't act that way. Think about folks who got this thing that weren't from the world of wrestling, because there's been a lot of mainstream press on your last match. Think of what they must think of professional wrestling. And speaking of that, now we're going to get on to the match. Speaking about what they must think about professional wrestling. And on to the review of the show and the match. It's like night and day. I actually enjoyed the show quite a bit. I love the old school Jim Crockett promotions, the set, mixed with the new school. I loved the fact that they had Tony Schiavone and David Crockett, who had broadcasted together back in the day on TBS. For older folks like me, they used to love World Championship Wrestling show on TBS back in the 80s. That was great. I loved that some guys I know and had been on shows with, and gals, were on the show. Starting with Kevin Cross, who was on my old King's Court show, and I did a show with in Las Vegas back in 2016. And myself being a shooter, I loved the match with him and Harry Smith. He goes by a different name now, but he used to call himself the most vicious shooter, Kevin Cross, who goes by Killer Cross now. And that was a great match. They had a great fight. They went at it. And Harry Smith is scientific wrestling coach for Jake Shannon's organization that I had just booked Jake here for an interview with Hannibal. I loved Ricky Morton, who I worked on shows with for Southern Championship Wrestling. I was on at least half a dozen shows with him back in 2008, 2009, in Lawrence, South Carolina. And he was considered really old back then, and he still looked good. And I kind of prejudged it myself. And I started thinking, you know, hey, if I would have booked this, because I booked independent pro wrestling shows, I booked MMA fights, MMA cards. I've booked grappling cards, one that's here on the Hannibal TV. So I have some experience in that area, so I do speak for some experience. And I was thinking, you know, the air is going to be out of the room by the time the Flair match comes on, okay? And I'm thinking they should have put Flair's match first, and they should have had him go against Ricky Morton. And I was proven wrong, and we'll get to that. Got to Jordan Grace, who I was worked for Max Messiah shows, the promoter that the shows in Guyana some years ago. That match took people completely out, okay, and took a lot of the air out of the room. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to get to the Flair match, but I want to point this out. During that match, Ellering, who I believe is Paul Ellering's daughter, I think it's her Deborah Ellering, I apologize if I get her first name right. She hurt her ankle right in the opener, okay? When that happened, she should have immediately been finished. Somebody should have hooked her in a toe hold, ankle lock, and taken her out. They never even went after the ankle, so that took the air out of the room. The match was slow, and I'm thinking, God, the next match is going to be Ric Flair, and there's no way that they're going to be able to keep the crowd and keep the energy. And I prejudged that, and I was wrong. Jeff Jarrett came out looking great. Karen Jarrett came out looking smoking hot. What a great heel Jeff Jarrett is. In that final tag team match, man, he helped carry that match. He was old school, an old school heel, and he proved work smarter, not harder. He proved that less is more. Now, Ric Flair was out there looking like Joe Biden, you know, moving very slow. But that actually added to the drama, because I sitting there watching this, and I've been a professional MMA fighter and a pro wrestler myself. I was worried for Flair. I was worried for his pacemaker, you know, and I was legitimately worried. And I think that added to the drama of the match, getting Flair's kids involved, daughters involved, Flair bleeding. It was a good, solid, old school match. I think it went a little long, but they kept the crowd. And man, what a pop at the end of that match. So, despite Flair out there looking like Joe Biden, there was not a lot of heat to his chops at all. Very slow. That was a great match, and I think it was a great match largely because you had some old school there. Really good old school. I think Andrade was great. Flair's tag partner. I think Jay Lethal was great, but I think it was mainly Jeff Jarrett. What a great heel Jeff Jarrett is, man. What a great heel. Got me in there. The emotion of the match, you could feel the crowd was so into it. Great match. Now, Rick, the Gathering's coming up. Bill Hazelwood, one of the bookers for the Gathering, was with me when I beat the hell out of your late son Reed's old amateur wrestling teammate in South Carolina, in Spartanburg. And they want you to get your revenge on me. Rick, I've been riding you hard. I had Grantomaniacs in the crowd carrying signs. I had MMA Fight Media bothering you. You can get your revenge on me at the Gathering. I'm being dead serious. I don't want to see you do another match. And this is going to be real as it gets. You get 20 unanswered chops on my 52-inch chest. And I know you want to do it. I know you legitimately hate me. There's been a lot of stuff going on these last couple days with all these media contacting Wendy for comments, fight media, with my Granamaniacs that were there in the crowd in Nashville. So Rick, good job tonight. Not so much because of you, but great show there, old Haystacks Thompson. And Rick, if you're game, coming up this month, because we're in August now, The Gathering, Your Revenge, 20 unanswered chops. And I will say it to close this out, because this was your night, Ric Flair. Woo!